Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Monday morning Coffee with Doc. I'm glad you joined us here. It's August the 23rd, and we're ready to jump into another chapter of the book of Joshua. Uh, this morning, let me do a little bit of reviewing for you. I think it's good as we keep up every week when we go through a long study like this, if we can keep up every week with a little bit of a review. And so I want to remind you that Moses is dead. God has commissioned Joshua to take over for Moses. And Joshua is leading the people out of the wilderness existence. And they're coming up on the eastern side of the Jordan River. Now, that means that from Egypt, they've gone around to the south of Israel and come up the eastern side of the Jordan River. And then they crossed over the Jordan from the east side, according to the way God planned for them to do. And they got into the land that we now know as Israel. And when they got in there, there were battles on the other side of the Jordan, and there were victories on the other side of the Jordan. But the whole thing was culminated in the crossing over to the Jordan of the Jordan River into the land of Israel. And you remember when they crossed over, they set up a monument, a monument of stones, landmarks, so that when children of the future generations ask, what do these stones mean, they would tell them that this is where the Lord allowed Israel to cross over. And then they came up against their first big problem in the country, and that was Jericho. And God took them through that in an unusual way, but God led them and took them through that victory. And then the next little town that they came to, they said, we can take this without a whole lot of problem. They didn't depend on God. They didn't depend on prayer. They didn't listen to God. They just went out in their own strength. They were horribly humiliated and defeated. And so they got on their face before God, and God gave them uh, uh, his forgiveness. And God said, dig out the sin that's in the camp, deal with the sin, and then come back and talk to him again. And they did. And they came back before the Lord, and he gave them specific instructions on how to take Ai, and they did. So now they've had 2 victories and 1 defeat, major, in the land of Israel. But they've got a lot more that they've got to do. And so let me remind you, today we're in Joshua chapter 9. Let me just read the first few verses here that'll get us a little bit of setting for what we're going to be looking at. In chapter 9, in verse 1, it says, now when all the kings west of the Jordan, now that's the ones we're talking about, that they haven't defeated, and it names them. Now when all the kings west of the Jordan heard about these things, that is the victory of Jericho, and the defeat of Ai, and then the victory over Ai, it says, when the kings in the hill country, in the western foothills, and along the entire coast of the Mediterranean Sea as far as Lebanon. Now that's all from the Jordan River over to the Mediterranean Sea. That's all of the present-day Israel. Said when they heard, and he names the kings of the Hittites, the Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Avites, Jebusites, they came together to wage war against Joshua and Israel. Now, let me just remind you that coming out of Egypt would correspond to the salvation, to accepting Christ. And crossing the Jordan and possessing the land that God has already given to them corresponds to living the Christian life. And the one thing I want us to remember today as we start into this week, the one thing I want us to remember is that winning 1 or 2 battles does not mean the war is over. I'm telling you that in the Christian life, you are going to face battle after battle after battle. Now, the devil knows he cannot defeat you, but he also knows that he can make you totally ineffective in living the Christian life. because he can bully you, he can intimidate you, he can deceive you, he can lie to you. There's so many things he's able to do. Get inside your head and cause problems for you, just like the enemy did here. And we're going to title this study this week, "It Is What It Is, Unless It's Not." Now, Barbara likes this particular one because she had a problem with a nasal congestion and went in. It was about her third or fourth sinuplasty, and when I was waiting for her to wake up, the doctor came in to the foot of her bed, and I said, "Well," and he said, "Well, it's not." And I said, "It's not what?" He said, "It's not." I said, "What do you mean it's not?" He said, "That's what I mean. It's snot. It's nothing but snot." And we got it all. Well, Barbara doesn't like for me to tell that, so don't tell her I put it in here. But it is what it is, unless it's snot. And sometimes what we think it is turns out to be snot. It's gruesome. It's bad. And it's not what it seems. And now that's what we want to talk about today. This week is it's not what it seems. And winning one battle does not mean the war is over. The enemy is going to come at you, and he's going to come at you in every possible way. Now, there'll be times when it'll be a full frontal assault, and you'll know it from the beginning. But there will be many other times, more times probably, that he will come to you in a very deceitful way. And this chapter that we're going to look at this week is a story of deceit. And it pictures one of the most effective strategies of the devil. Now, I just hope you don't run into this before we get back here tomorrow morning. And yes, I know it's a cliffhanger, but we don't have time to go into it today. Just realize that this strategy is effective in the life of the believer, just as it was effective in the life of the Israelites. If you want to read on ahead, do it. It's called the Gibeonite deception, or what I call "It Is What It Is, Unless It's Not." We'll see you in the morning, and until then, realize every day is going to bring a different battle. But God is greater than all the enemies that you'll face. God bless you. Have a great day today.